welcome back to another video. Today we are going to talk about my game in round 9 of Reykjavik Open, the very last round. And this is the day before I'm flying to my next tournament, so it's like super crazy over here. But I still have some time to talk about this game, and it's really important because I'm also curious to talk about it and to analyze my game. So let's get right into it. In round 9, I faced Gunnar Erik Gudmundsson from Iceland, and he is rated 2009. So very strong player, and yeah, I should be able to beat him, of course. I'm 200 points higher rated, but I believe my opponent is a kid, so you never know with kids. They can be very strong, and their rating does not say much. So going to this game, when I started preparing, I didn't have so much time because this was a morning round, and I decided to take a different approach. I've been playing e4 this entire tournament, and now I thought, let's try d4. And for some reason, I don't know, I have these random moments where I'm like, okay, today I'm playing d4, today I'm playing c4, today I'm playing this or that. I want to mix it up a little bit, and I just enjoy playing different positions. So my opponent plays knight f6, and here I play bishop g5, which is a Trompowsky. And after this, my opponent went d5. I remembered that I was really prepared for e6. I really expected this to happen, which is what my opponent would play most of the times. And then I would play something like e4, and the game would continue. So let me just illustrate an example of a line. So e4, h6 is very common. And then you take on f6, queen takes f6, and you give up the pair of bishops. But as you can see, white is controlling the center, has very active play, and black is a little bit, you know, stuck with developing the pieces, and the queen is a little bit misplaced here. So I thought this will bring interesting ideas, and it would give an interesting position. But my opponent went for the move d5. And I didn't really know what to do here. Like, I did prepare this a little bit. I saw what to do more or less. But yeah, I was not entirely sure what I wanted to do here. And I decided to go for e3. Because after e6, bishop d3, c5, c3, we are in a sort of London setup where the bishop is now on g5, which is a little bit different. And the reason is because after knight c6, you can now play a move such as f4, and you are in some sort of stonewall position. I do have to admit, I am not entirely sure what the correct setup is here. I don't know for sure what the right move order is, and perhaps I should develop my knights first, but it's really hard to see what is best. And I thought f4 is simply fine, but turns out f4 is not the greatest because of queen b6, and it gets a little bit annoying with that pawn on b2 being exposed. So bishop b7 is what my opponent played, knight d2, and my opponent played b6 here. And I was very certain that this was not the way. This is like some sort of passive setup where if you put your bishop on b7, you're just developing the pieces, but you're not able to really make progress. And as mentioned before, this queen needs to go to b6. So now the queen cannot go there anymore, and it's a little bit difficult to see what the ideas are here for black. So my opponent played b6, and I played knight f3, bishop b7, short castle, h6, simply developing moves, right? And here I was not sure whether I want to take on f6 or do I simply go back, because the idea is that if you take, you lose a pair of bishops again. But the problem here for black is that this bishop is not great. Look at this wall of pawns here. It's like a massive wall. It's really hard to break. It's very typical in the stone wall. And yeah, I really considered this heavily, but I was not entirely sure if I wanted to give up the bishop pair, and I just wanted to keep my bishop because I thought that it's, you know, a pretty decent piece after all. Bishop h4, and here knight e4. I did not actually expect this move because it looks like this knight is hanging, right? So let's say bishop takes e7 because the bishop was hanging, but then after knight takes e7, the knight is suddenly protected by both the pawn, which was already defending the knight, but also the bishop now. So here I was not entirely sure what I needed to play here. I considered moves such as bishop b5 check, of course, because now I can give a check here And the question is, what can black do here? Of course, there's king f8, but you don't want to play king f8. If you play a move such as bishop c6, I was not entirely sure if I really like this position, because now after takes, I can take on e4, and I was not sure how to evaluate this position. I figured that I should be better, but I was not really willing to trade pieces so easily. I don't know. I was not entirely sure if I wanted to do this. So yeah, in hindsight, this was probably the better approach to the position, but I played knight e5. I wanted to put the knight on e5 first and then consider, okay, like, do I take on e4 with the bishop perhaps? Do I play bishop b5 afterwards if my opponent decides to move that knight back or something? I don't know. But my opponent was short castle. And here I decided to play aggressive, as I have been doing the entirety of the tournament, and I played g4. It's a little bit risky. For now, it's fine, of course, because it's really hard to see how black can attack, but white needs to be careful here. My opponent went g6, and here I went queen c2, simply reinforcing the attack on the knight. My opponent went f5, and I was pretty happy about this because I thought there's no way that this is good. This pawn structure is basically permanently weak. My knight is safe on e5, cannot be attacked anymore, and I was really happy about this. But the problem is that I don't know what to do. I have a good position. I am aware of this, but where is the play? Where is the attack? If I play moves such as rook f3, I'm just not making progress and super slow. Really easy for my opponent to defend that. It was a bit difficult for me to understand what I'm supposed to be doing here, and that's why I made the less good move, knight takes e4. This is still not so bad, but as it turns out, I was supposed to either play knight f3 or bishop takes e4. And the difficult part here is for me to understand that I'm supposed to make certain moves in such a pawn structure, because I'm usually not playing this pawn structure. I'm not too familiar with this. So that's also why I'm not entirely sure what I'm supposed to do. And I could really sense that during the game, I felt pretty clueless in a way. I know where to put my pieces, but then I didn't know what to do next. So yeah, this was quite nice to see in hindsight that, okay, apparently I can just take that knight off the board and then work around here with the knights. And this bishop is not going anywhere, because let's say if the bishop takes e4, d takes e4, this bishop is just standing there. It's not doing much. And this pawn on c5 becomes a problem for black. So yeah, I figured after seeing this, I was like, okay, makes sense. But during the game, I did not feel comfortable about this. I was not so sure about it at all. So I played the move knight takes e4 instead. I wanted to keep the bishops on the board. F takes e4, bishop e2, king g7, and here I went for queen a4. I was playing pretty quickly. We're on move 17. I have 52 minutes on the clock. My opponent 45 minutes, and I was feeling confident. I was feeling ready, you know, to start attacking. And here I played queen a4 with the idea to try to control some squares on the queen side, try to take some space there maybe. But also, so this is actually really funny, because as my opponent was spending some time here, I started to realize, wait, so my idea is to play bishop a6. I want to trade off the bishops and then control all the light squares around on the queen side. But then I figured, okay, if my opponent was a6, a little bit annoying, and I'm not sure how to deal with this. But then it suddenly hit me, this beautiful move, knight d7. And I was like, what? The idea behind this move is that it looks like you're going to face bishop c6 and you lose the piece, right? Because of the attack on the queen and the knight. But then I found out that there's knight takes f8. And the threat is that, okay, if you don't take my queen, of course, you're going to lose material. So if you take my queen, then knight takes e6. And suddenly I'm just winning the queen because of the fork. So then I'll end up being on material, and this line is just really good for me. So I was really happy to find this line because yeah, a6 feels like super logical move. But if you're not able to play bishop c6, then what's happening here? What can black do here? Because the idea is that, okay, I'm attacking the rook, of course, but I'm also threatening to take that pawn. And then another move that comes to mind is queen e8. And the idea is then that I can take b takes c5, and then I have knight takes c5. And my queen is protected on a4. The knight was not pinned anymore because my knight can just simply take on c5. So that way I would be in a winning position. So seeing that a6 is a bad move made me really excited, but it's also pretty easy to spot for my opponent that a6 is a really bad move. So that's why my opponent went for queen d6. Really good move, stopping all the threats, making sure that knight d7 is not as scary anymore. So yeah, I had to think of some other plans now. And I went for the plan that I originally had, bishop a6. Bishop takes, queen takes, rook c8. And now I'm just starting an attack on the queen side because I felt like the king side is pretty closed. I'm not really able to play f5 here, which I really want to. And other than that, yeah, I'm not really looking for an attack over there just yet. So that's why a4, rook c7, a5, and my opponent had a really clever plan. He played rook b8 over here, and the idea is simple. So, of course, there are some a takes b6 threats in the position because of the pinned pawn on a7, so that's why rook b8, and at the same time, my opponent is threatening moves such as b takes a5, and then attacking the pawn on b2, maybe including some rook b6 somewhere. Of course, the pawn is pinned for now, but I was already sensing some danger for my poor queen on a6, because at rook f2, knight c6, rook f1, I'm shifting the attention to the king side because I didn't really feel like my attack was any successful anymore on the queen side. And here my opponent hits me with c4, pretty much trapping my queen on a6, and I started to feel really uncomfortable because it felt like the position is simply falling apart. My opponent is able to gain control again over the queen side, and if that happens, then what's left for me? So I took on b6, rook takes b6, and I have to leave over here. And my opponent cannot take on b2, of course, because it's defended by the rook, which is why I put the rook on a second rank. But yeah, despite my opponent not really having good moves to play here, I feel a bit uncomfortable because I cannot attack. Like, if I am unable to attack, then what can I do on the next move? Rook b8 is what my opponent played, and here I went for the move f5. I was really determined to attack, right? And I wanted to put pressure on my opponent, but turns out that this move is just simply not good. So instead, I should have played the move h4 to start an attack with h5. And as soon as that pawn on g6 is gone, then I can consider moves such as f5 and continue like this. But I was really concerned that I was in a rush, that this was the right time to play the move that I played in the game. So I played f5, and yeah, it turns out that this move was just terrible because knight takes e5, d takes e5, queen takes e5. And of course, I saw all of this. I was aware that I'm losing a pawn, but I thought that my two rooks are just much better, and I'm going to infiltrate into black's position. I take on g6 because I keep the double pawns on the e-file, and I want to make the king feel a little bit uncomfortable. So king takes g6, rook f8, and I was feeling really confident here until my opponent went for this very annoying move, rook e7. Such a strong move played my opponent, and I was very shocked. I thought, wait, I cannot access this king anymore. My queen is basically out of the game. I was so shocked that queen e8 is just not possible anymore. And it made so much sense because I want to play queen e8 and checkmate somehow. And my opponent just stopped it. And I could just not believe that this was so easy to stop for him. So yeah, that was quite a bummer. We're currently in move 30 and my opponent has 12 minutes, but I have 21 minutes. So I have plenty of time, but I have a terrible position because I'm down a pawn and my attack has died out pretty much. I play rook e8 with the hope and attempt that I trade the rooks, give the king some checks, and just pray and hope for the best. I don't know what to do anymore. Queen f6 is played by my opponent, and my position is simply falling apart. Queen c6, queen f7, take, h4. This was sort of a desperate attempt to try to distract my opponent because, let's say, after queen takes h4, of course, I take on e6 and I can start giving checks. After king g7, there's queen d7, and I just continue giving checks, and that should be a draw. And if my opponent over pushes, then maybe I can start to go for a win with queen takes d5 and taking some pawns, but this should definitely be a draw. But my opponent instead went for queen f7. And you can see the bar go back to zeros, right? So the thing is that apparently there was only one move that was completely winning here, which goes to show that when you actually make moves that are pretty complicated for your opponent to handle, and there's like only one move that they can do to win this game, then it means that your move is really good. And I would say that this move is not obvious. Of course, at the board, I have no idea what the evaluation is. I have no idea that my opponent has only one move to win here. But seeing in hindsight, I was really happy that I played this move h4 to try to complicate it for my opponent, because it is pretty difficult to make the best move here. The best move here is to play king f7. When you see this move, it's actually really logical, because you want to take on h4, but the pawn on e6 is undefended after that. So that's why king goes here to protect the pawn. It makes so much sense, but it makes very little sense to play this move, to think about this move, because you're retreating. And like if you play king f7, like you go back and you go sort of towards my queen. So it makes a little sense logically speaking, but when you see the move in hindsight, when you see it with the computer, you're like, oh, right. Could have thought about that one. So yeah, I was pretty shocked to see that this was the only move actually. I don't really remember honestly what I was thinking in this position. I think after king f7 I was ready to play moves such as h5 and just kind of pray that my opponent cannot enter my king side somehow. I don't know, that I was able to take enough space like this. But okay, my opponent went for king f7 instead. Here I made a mistake with queen d6. Admittedly, I'm not sure why I didn't play, you know, like the correct move. I mean, it basically, I had to put my queen on the 8th rank. That was the main idea that I had to follow. But yeah, I wanted to play queen d6 so I can always go to g3 or e5 or like any of those dark squares and try to find a way inside this box, you know, on the king side, somehow enter towards that king. So once again, my opponent has another opportunity to strike, but he misses it. The move that my opponent was supposed to play was the move h5. And it's pretty difficult to play this move because you don't really want to open up on the king side, because then the king will be exposed. So I totally understand that my opponent didn't go for this, because yeah, you can take here, or maybe g5 also, it looks interesting for white. So difficult to see how this is completely winning for black, but I'm guessing that the king is just entering over here. So let's say queen f5, and the next moves are just going to be king g4, king f3, and you're just entering on the king side yourself and taking that pawn e3 and win very soon. So yeah, during the game I didn't really like see the danger as much of this, but apparently it's pretty bad for white. But my opponent went queen f6, and here I played queen d7. My opponent took finally on h4, and here I took on e6, and after a few moves we decided to repeat the moves a bunch of times, and neither of us was really, you know, trying to claim or offer a draw. It was really funny. But yeah, I was really hopeful. I mean, okay, hopeful. There was one trick that I still had up my sleeve, and I can totally see people blunder this. Like, I'm very certain you're low on the clock. My opponent was on the 1.5 minute. We did cross move 40 now, but let's say on move 39. This is move 39. You have 1 minute on the clock. It is very possible that you start making moves that make very little sense. And the one move that is like very logical but very bad here is king g5. My opponent could totally have played this. I can also see myself play this for some reason and then just be really sad about, you know, losing the game. But the problem here is that I'm not going to give you a check here, because then you can take the pawn g4. I will give you a check on g8. And after this, the only move you have is king f6. And then you see what happens on this diagonal. We give a check, and next move we win the queen. It is absolutely insane. And I can totally see anyone blunder this for whatever reason. Some of the craziest things have happened in chess in time trouble. So yeah, this can totally happen. But anyway, my opponent saw this, played king g7. We repeated the moves a few times, and after, I don't know, the third time, I think I simply offered a draw. I didn't even bother to like claim the draw. I was like, yeah, let's just offer a draw, because my opponent cannot make progress. I was very aware of this, and this is how the game ended. We made well, we repeated moves, but we just, yeah, agreed to a draw. And yeah, that was the last game of Reykjavik Open. quite a roller coaster. And again, I was completely losing. I was pushing really badly, but I was once again really determined to win, because if I would win this game, the loss of rating would not be so bad. Or yeah, I think it would be like just a few points. But now it went all the way down to 11 points. So this tournament made me lose 11 points, which is quite sad, because my final score was 5.5 out of 9, which is pretty high. But I just didn't really face strong opponents. I only faced 2 GMs and I lost it both. And then other than that, I had 3 draws against low-rated players, and then I had 4 wins. And that was just not enough to have a good performance and win rating. So that's a little bit unfortunate, of course, but overall I'm super happy with how I played, and I feel really motivated to continue. It was a really good tournament, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it overall. I will save you the details for the next video, because in the next video I want to share some more personal details about the tournament. I want to create some sort of summary of what happened and what I learned, and kind of like go a bit more into depth about how it was mentally, how I was doing, and if I am noticing already some progress and all of that stuff, right? So yeah, I read your guys' YouTube comments, and it was really nice to see what you guys want to see in the next video. So I'll make sure I'll try to follow up on that. But for now, thank you so much for watching, guys. This was the last game of Reykjavik Open. I hope you guys enjoyed following this series, as the next tournament is already coming up. As I said, I'm flying tomorrow to Spain to participate in the 3rd Magistral Villa de Sahara Norm tournament, where I'll be facing really strong players, because I'm ranked 8th out of 10. So it's going to be quite a tough tournament, but we will be streaming that again. We'll have recaps, at least I'll try to, because we have 2 games per day. So make sure to check out the link in the description. I'll drop one below with more information about the tournament. But for now, thank you so much for watching, guys. Thank you so much for all the support. Stay tuned for the summary of Reykjavik Open. There's so much I want to share with you. So yeah, have a good one.